part 2 of our photography and cosplay series. We're continuing our interviews with Sudi from Silverfire Studios, Miss Amanda Stars from Pretty Prism Photography, and Anoli Shiba with Anoli Images. We're just going to cover a few more topics as far as photography goes, and hope you guys enjoy. Thanks for sticking around, and enjoy part 2. This next one's also kind of a big question. I'm going to start with Anoli, so be prepared.
Oh no!
So, I feel like this comes up a lot, but what is a cosplayer legally able to use their photos for? And also, should they or are they able to edit, crop, or otherwise change those photos from what they've been given? Because I know some people do it and some don't, and I know there are very strong feelings on both sides. But I wanted to get each of your opinions on, like, legally, and also how a photographer, I am sure, has strong feelings on that as well.
Whew, this is like a political debate, you know? Oh boy! Yes. So.
Mood. But also, like, I hear from cosplayers a lot more than I hear from photographers, and I want to make sure that people know both sides of this, you know.
So, I will honestly say, the Photographers Guild will back any photographer for a photo they have taken, because it has been set in law that the photo is owned by the person who took the picture. So, in all honesty, any photo I take, it is mine. Yes, it has your likeness in it, but it is mine. Part of the reason why you do want your photographer to own that copyright is because you have, like, the Photographers Guild out there who will help you back up any legal claim. So if someone is using the photographer's photo of you and is slurring your name, you can legally go in there and say, hey, this needs to legally be taken down. I have actually done that before. And it's amazing how quickly a website will take that photo down. It's great. You know, that's how I defend my clients and my friends. As far as...
So yeah, a lot of cosplayers, I don't think, understand that it's there to protect them also. It's not...
It is.
Just a photographer going, that's mine, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, as far as legally able to use, this is why you have things like contracts, because the contract literally lays it out for you to be able to say, hey, this is what you can and cannot do with my photos. So, you know, someone who is like many of us here in this chat who kind of earn a little bit of money or a livelihood off of photography. When you are sitting there making money off of something that I've spent 25 years in college degree to do, that's, I mean, to put it lightly, it's rude, but is also, it does edge on the of copyright violation. And you have, and as a photographer, I have to defend that. However, once again, the word comes up, communication. If you communicate with your photographer and say, hey, I would love to use these to do, to sell posters. Is that okay? And, you know, everybody's different. Some photographers will say yes, some of them will say no. And when you're trying to decide which photographer you want to go with, have that end product in mind. Do you want photos to sell? Okay. Find a photographer who will allow you to sell them. As far as editing and cropping, once again, that for me, I have the conversation with my clients because I'm not as good at Photoshop. If someone wants to go in and Photoshop an image of mine, I'm okay with that. But the rule is you have to keep my watermark on there. And it's actually, you can embed your copyright into the image. So it's actually there in the data, which is actually pretty mind-blowing and fantastic, I think. But don't, I mean, this is this is where people are like, well, can I use this for my profile picture? Well, profile picture is automatically going to crop out a watermark. Are you okay with that? And my personal opinion is, yeah, you're using my photo for your profile. Awesome, I did great. So it's, again, that's, that communication that you have, that dialogue that you have with your photographer ahead of time. Are they going to be okay with you wanting to go in and edit a couple things, or crop it down, or, whatever and whatnot. I have given my little image to people with my copyright or my watermark on it, so they can edit the photo and then put it back in.
Okay, cool. I'm going to go ahead and hop over to Amanda. Let me know if you want me to repeat the question, or are you good?
Oh, but kind of bounce off of what Enoli was saying.
Yeah.
Especially since they covered like their bases with the copyright laws and whatnot, and I'll just kind of jump in how I handle that particular.
Yeah, please do.
As far as like photo rights typically, and they're basically born with a photographer, and unless the photographer gives them to you voluntarily via contract, you really. That image is the photographer's no matter what. And so they can dictate how it's used. As far as how I choose to handle that whole situation, I try my best to let people know this is for social media use only. When I'm doing convention shoots, this is for social media use. They can talk to me about prints, and I'm happy to allow prints to be made and whatnot. But I do ask that they go through me either for the prints and they pay the extra surcharge, because I do this for a living. They pay the extra charge on top of the prints, or they pay full out for the photo rights, and I give them the photo rights and the non-social media version of the image so that they can get high quality prints. Yeah. So
I was actually sorry for interrupting, but
no, you're fine.
I was actually going to go over that in another question, but since you touched on it,
Oops.
No, it's okay. As far as like prices depending on promotion versus advertising versus selling prints, how does that vary for you?
So yeah, that definitely varies for me. If I've done product photography, I've done photography for like conventions that are non like nerd related, but I did a shoot for an API conference at one point where I was taking pictures of presenters and whatnot. And then I do cosplay photography, I do portrait photography, all that fun stuff. So it's just the intended use for the image is what dictates how much I will charge. So say with conventions, I don't necessarily charge as much because I'm already going to be at that convention. I'm scheduling people. It's mostly paying for my convention and whatnot. So I'll do the photography for that base price, and I charge the same price all across the board, and I'll do the edits and return, and I make sure that people are aware this is for social media use only. But in the example of when I did product photography, they were also buying the rights to use those and advertise and make money off of those images. So I obviously charged a bit more than I would have for something like cosplay photography. So it fluctuates depending. And
Gotcha.
I always am I try to be as upfront about the use and the expected use. I let people know not to crop my photography. Cropping out your photographer's watermark, at least in my experience, is a really good way to get blacklisted from getting to work with that photographer and their community and their circle of photographer friends. So it's just you got to be careful. Another thing that goes into the photography that this has happened to me before, and it's just don't change the photo unless you have permission from the photographer. I'll give people, if I trust them enough with the program and whatnot, I'll give them RAWs to edit if that's prior agreement. But I've had people change the composition of a photo by either turning it onto its side and posting it how it wasn't intended, and it's just even changing the perspective of a photo can completely change the feeling of it and the intention of it. And that's in in my opinion, it's kind of betraying the original photo and the artist's work and stuff. So, like, just be aware of that stuff going on, and that your photographer might not be that happy with you if you change something, even as simple as orientation when you post it. So, yeah.
That makes sense. Sudi, same question. Okay. Let me know if you want me to repeat or, like, go through all the things here.
All right. So, the first topic of, ownership of the photo, Anoli, is 100% correct on that. That it belongs to the photographer. It's also protective rights for who is in the image, because then they can, have it removed from places or so on and so forth. As far as watermarking and altering the image, honestly, I see it as you just altered somebody's art. Someone's art that you just paid for. It's like taking a print and then you're like, well, I'm just going to have this corner of it. I mean, I don't know anyone who would just literally cut a print in half, of somebody's artwork. But that's kind of how it feels when you see your art has been altered, or if a filter has been put on it. It's kind of like, oh, first off, ouch, that hurts. I put my heart into that. And then second off, it's, did that actually make it look better, or does it look worse? And then third, are other people going to look at that and think that that's my style? So it's also misrepresentation of the photographer at that point. Yeah,
I worked with a photographer once, and I thought it was interesting because they said, you can edit it afterwards if you want, but you have to take credit for the edit. You can say picture by me, edits by you, because if it's something messy, I don't want credit.
Yes. Yeah, and
I'm like, that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I actually will do that if somebody wants to do certain edits on there that I'm like, okay, you want to do a composition that I'm not really comfortable with doing, so they have to have written approval by me saying, yes, you may edit this image, and they also have to credit whoever does the editing.
Yeah.
And so that's actually one on my policies, is that phrase that you were just saying. It kind of goes both ways, where, like, if it's crappy, then I don't have to take credit for it. But also, if it's really good, I don't want somebody coming to me and being like, well, you did composition on this piece. I'll be like, no, I can't do that,
Yeah. Well, and I feel like it's something people don't necessarily take into consideration. They're just like, oh, well, I got this picture, I can do what I want to it. And I mean, especially when you see so many memes and things going around, people want to make like an aesthetic board or something, with their cosplay photos. And I just want to make sure people realize that they should, maybe be communicating with their photographer about stuff like that.
Yeah, and so I think a good thing is, again, the communication thing. Make sure you have consent first to anything. Then if the artist says no, you kind of need to respect that. I know that when I post images on Instagram, and as a cosplayer, I go out of my way to make sure that the image isn't cropped and that their watermark is still on there.
Right.
So,
nice.
Just kind of show that respect,
Yeah.
And hope that, we get that too.
Good. Wrapping up that question, Amanda, Inoli, did you guys have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, just the cropping. To avoid cropping, especially on Instagram, since Instagram automatically crops photos to a 4:5. Yes. There are lots and lots of apps that you can download to avoid it. So typically, if you're cropping and you use that as an excuse, it's not as kosher because you can run it through no crop or something like that, and to make it a square format with the full image. So just be aware that there are those resources out there for people to use on Instagram and as influencers and the whatnot as well.
This old lady doesn't understand how to use Instagram and can't figure out how to not crop photos. So sometimes I do take them in, and especially if I want to show the whole piece and not just a link to the photographer's site. Sorry, I mean, I know this is from a cosplayer's perspective, an old lady cosplayer, but I'll link back to the image in the photographer's gallery because I can't figure out how not to crop it. Sorry.
I think that's
so
okay
archaic.
too, though, because you're still linking back and you're using the original image. So
yeah, I'm trying to, and especially when my my small little photo kohai goes out of their way to do photos for me, I'm always so flattered about it, and I really want to show them off because they're adorable and their work is amazing. So I always feel bad about it. Sorry, I'm guilty as charged.
Nice. All right. So Amanda touched on this a little bit earlier. So I'm actually going to start with her on this question.
Oh, no.
I was actually really glad you brought it up because of how I don't want to say like how dangerous, but I think a lot of people like don't realize that there are predators and things out there. But I wanted to touch on what are some warning signs a cosplayer should maybe look for to show that they are maybe in a less than desirable situation. And also the same for a photographer, because I think it works both ways.
It definitely does work both ways. I've had less issues as a photographer, but I do occasionally get people who kind of creep on me, even if I'm like dressed as a photographer and not a cosplayer, which is always really weird and surreal, especially at cons.
Oh no!
But I think big red flags to look out for. They are upset that you brought somebody with you to the shoot without priorly agreeing to it. I always recommend to prior agree to it anyway, and just be like, hey, I'm going to bring a friend. If they say no to bringing a friend, if you let them know in advance, that's a big if you've never shot with someone, this is going to be a lot of generalizing and whatnot, because I've had these experiences, but obviously not everyone does this. There have been people who offer free shoots in their hotel room. I wouldn't go to those necessarily unless you know the photographer for sure.
Gross.
Oh god, it's so bad.
And I'm definitely not asking this question as a way of like victim blaming at all.
Oh, absolutely.
I just want people to be like aware of like when they may be in a less than safe situation. These are some things they should watch for.
Exactly, and it's just so important. Meeting places. You want to meet somewhere that there's a lot of people. Not necessarily meet in a hotel room right off the bat, but go to a hotel room after you've met the person. A lot of the cosplayers that I shoot with, I'm meeting for the first time at a convention if they're not a repeat that I normally work with. So I always meet in a nice crowded area where like there's lots of people around. This is both for my own safety and for their safety, and so they feel safe. And then we'll go from that spot to the shoot location, and I let them bring them friends. Honestly, if they bring their friends, it's nice because you have somebody who might want to like flip a cape or hold a light for you, which is always really, really nice too. But little things like that. I also recommend looking at portfolios and doing research on photographers beforehand. Google photographers. Like there are some photographers that have had not so savory experiences, but they still keep working. And obviously that's what the news has been about recently. It was like this photographer worked with so many people, and then something unsavory came out about him that he wasn't being professional. So it's just use a lot of common sense. Try to be aware of your surroundings, be aware of the situation that's going on, and if that would be a normal interaction or if that would be an interaction that kind of is like that movie creeper stalker feel.
That's a good point. Anoli, did you want to add anything to that?
I'm going to say it again. Just back Amanda up on this one. If the photographer is very unhappy that you are not alone, or upset that you've brought a friend, run fast. Just Doctor Who it out of there. Just go. To me, it's a very big, huge red flag. And I mean, even as a photographer, if they're like, can I come by myself? Because I try to promote like someone else coming along with you, because free cape flipper. That's perfect. But at the same time, it's a second set of eyes that is watching, especially at a con, your equipment and your client's stuff. Because we always carry our purses with us, and we need to put our badge down or our glasses down. So it's always nice to have a second pair of eyes watching everything.
Nice.
But one of the things that was said ahead of time, one of the things that I've seen be a red flag before is asking for inappropriate photos ahead of time. And it's happened before where people are like, well, I want you to be comfortable with yourself. No. Just anytime you feel even slightly uncomfortable with something, run away. I mean, that's either as a cosplayer or a photographer, because I've had a piece of my equipment go missing for a short time. And when I said where it was, very specifically, suddenly it magically was found. This is not cheap equipment, guys. So yeah, you could pawn it off, but not cool. You're going to get yourself blacklisted. And
yeah.
I mean, the other thing that I try to make sure, as far as like, well, not just warning signs, but a safety thing, is try to be in an area where people are nearby. So if you are trying to get like a dark alley shoot for that moody effect, make sure there are people right there behind you. So if something were to happen, you can shout for help right away.
Yeah. Nice. Sudi, let me words right now. Sudi, do you have any thoughts you wanted to add?
Okay, yeah. You guys covered a lot of the big red flags. One that I wanted to go back and touch on is some of this location meetup bait and switch, where a photographer will first book the shoot with you. You had agreed upon a public place to meet, or a general place at the convention to meet, and then later in the day or day of the shoot, they tell you, no, we can't meet there. I want to meet in our hotel room, or your hotel room, or in my hotel room.
I've seen that
I don't
happen a
care
lot,
if
too.
you put money down on that shoot at that point. You need to say, I'm uncomfortable, and cancel. I have lost money on a shoot by doing that before, where this has happened to me as a cosplayer, and that's a huge red flag, where then all of a sudden they refuse to meet in a public place where it would have been comfortable, it would have been okay to do. Also, if they if a photographer is very set on doing a certain costume and only that costume, and like they're like creepy obsessed about that costume, like they're like, I want to shoot this character of yours, and you're like, oh, okay, that sounds fun, mind if I bring a friend? And they say no, there's your red flag. Or if you say oh, that costume's out of commission right now, how about I do something else? And they say no, only that costume. That's a red flag for you. Not saying that that's like a tell-all, but it does raise some flags. So yeah, it can be really interesting, trying to decide what is what's good and what's not good. And sometimes just saying no and being on the safe side of things is better than having something go wrong.
Yeah, definitely trust your gut.
For sure. But you guys kind of covered the big main red flags. Bring someone with, I know also with, as a photographer, if I have a handler with me, I'll ask them, like, is it okay if my handler's here with us? Because to make sure that they're okay with that second person as well.
Yep. Nice. Anoli and Amanda, did you guys want to follow up with anything before we move on?
There was one other thing, and it was mentioned earlier as well with the whole touching. If people touch you without permission or try to adjust you without permission, I'd also consider that a red flag, because that means they're not respecting your personal bubble. And it's important for a photographer to respect a personal bubble. So. Good point.
Anoli, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, so this is going to be kind of on a sideline, and I guess in a kind of a minor thing, but payment to me is a red flag. I try to encourage people to use PayPal because it financially protects them. So I have no connection to their credit cards or anything like that, just their PayPal account. So they, will forward me the money, and yay, I've been paid. They get their photos. Everything's hunky dory. If a photographer is like, oh, you can bring only cash, that can be okay. But I just would be a little on the cautious side, just because, if they know that you're always carrying cash with you, they could be someone who is profiling you. Maybe I'm going to get this guy later. The other thing is of course, if they want, and I've seen it before, the wireless thing that now you can swipe someone's credit card right there on their cell phone. That's a great way to have your finances captured by someone, especially if they decide that they're going to go for a shopping spree and get that new lens they've always wanted on your bank account. That's just be cautious about that. It's horrible to say it in these day and age, but it's better safe than sorry to protect yourself.
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh at that, but I like how Anoli thinks about a shopping spree and goes straight for buying new lenses.
Oh, right?
I got my eye on the lens, so someone want to give me their credit card?
I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead to our next question. We kind of touched on it earlier, and I'm going to start with Sudi for this one. But your turnaround time for processing, about what is normal to expect, when is it okay to follow up with a photographer, and are there ways to follow up that are less obnoxious than being like, hey, are those ready? Are those ready?
Okay. Wow, so this is a big topic, at least from a photographer point of view, because a lot of factors can go into this. It also depends on the style of business that the photographer chooses to do. Some will have a really fast turnaround time, and some will won't. It depends on if the photographer chooses that you have the ability to pick out your edits versus the photographer will go through and select the images that best appeal and is along their art style. Okay. So if there is if the opportunity for the cosplayer to choose out what images they want edited, that adds time to the turnaround time.
Right.
And so that is kind of on you, on the cosplayer, on how much time you take to pick out those images could add, tack on to the turnaround time. So if they end up taking like 3 weeks, to pick out their images, you just added 3 weeks to the turnaround because you just got bumped to the end of that list, as it cycles through. So, so there's that factor.
Yeah.
But, I mean, usually a quick turnaround time, I do see being something like 3 weeks after the shoot or event. Just because we all have lives, and first thing you do when you come home from a shoot or after a shoot, you back up the images. Okay, so that's going to take a night. You dump your SD card, you put it on the backup, and if you don't got it in 3 places, you don't got it. That's always been my saying. If you don't have it saved in 3 different places or 3 different devices, it is not backed up. Yeah. So,
and I mean, I know work time's going to vary by photographer as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's just an entire day or night just doing the backup of those images, because it depends on
that's a lot of information.
Yeah, shutter happy you were, I guess. And then there's also the culling. You're going through the images, seeing what ones that you're like, oh, no one wants to see that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so you got to cull through them. And then, so there's a little bit of a process before you ever get to that editing phase.
Gotcha.
And so that's why I feel like a 3-week turnaround time could actually be a really quick and really solid turnaround time. And then also depending on the amount of work that goes into it post-processing. So I mean, you're looking at like sense. 3 weeks to 3 months, you know.
Gotcha. Amanda, what are your thoughts?
So my turnaround time personally, I'm on the longer end of stuff. I end up doing about 3 months max post-processing.
Sure.
I stream my edits, so I'm on that schedule as well as editing outside of that schedule. Like Sudis said, the culling is a big thing. I'm one of the photographers who will decide the best images, and if I have like a really close tie between images to return, or if I have a surplus of extra images, I'll send those like previews of those to the client, see which ones they would like, or if they'd like additional edits as opposed to what we communicated. As far as editing goes in the post process and expecting pictures, I think setting expectations is key and communication is key. So if I'm running behind or if I don't think I'm going to hit it by the date that I quoted them at con, then I'm going to message them. I'm going to be like, hey, this is turning out to be a little bit longer than a turnaround time than I thought, but I should have them by, and you give them a new date. And just being able to budget your own time and be aware of the time that you've budgeted is really important. I shoot anywhere from 12 to 20 different shoots at a convention, so I come home with thousands of images, and to cull through them alone takes several days, so it just depends.
Gotcha. Okay.
I do think oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna mention that if your photographer isn't communicating with you, or if they haven't set those expectations, I do think it's appropriate to ask for the expectations as opposed to being like, why don't I have images yet, like 3 days after con? Because we do occasionally get those where I've been traveling home from a con and I'm on a plane and I get off the plane and I have like 6 messages from one person being like, hey, where are my pictures? And I was like, I haven't even gotten home to my computer. So it's just communicate with your photographer and be like, hey, so we shot this, and I was just wondering when I can expect about to see those photos back. And if you have a certain date, make your photographer aware of that before you shoot. So yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah, Anoli.
Actually, this is kind of a fun thing that I tried to do. On my business card, it says how many images you get back and about how many weeks is processing time. Because I'm an in-camera cosplay or photographer, I can, if I have 10 shoots at a con, I kind of know it's going to take me a little bit more time. For me, traditionally, I'm on the quicker side because I don't do a lot of post-processing. So I'm like about 2 weeks is usually what I'm at. but it's 2 weeks from the time that you choose your photos. I am one of the photographers. I like you to choose your photos. I do, cull from the herd and take out the ones that are just absolutely no one wants to see. But it's 2 weeks typically from when you choose. So if you never choose, you never get photos. And I actually have had to prod at cosplayers being like, hey, I really want to process this shoot. It is still open. Please choose your photos at your earliest convenience.
Yeah. Let me get my to-do list checked off.
Exactly. So, I mean, I feel like if you haven't heard hide nor hair of a photographer for at least 3 months, I would definitely prod at them. And the best way to ask is, hey, how are you doing? Have you had time to probably, to process these photos? The one thing I always emphasize in my workplace is say hello and ask how I'm doing first, then demand things. Because it's a very polite, professional atmosphere at that point in time.
Right.
So, I mean, I have been waiting for 6 years now for photos. Me personally, because I'm a very different body type and I'm a very different facial structure than most people out there, if I don't see photos within 3 months, I write you off. And this is also going back to the finances thing. If I have paid through PayPal, I will request my money back after I have communicated with you. I will have to say that even though, like everybody has said, life happens. And sometimes it stops you from being able to do what you want to do, which is the photography. Communicating is key. And I know personally, I did a shoot in January, and I felt horrid because I still hadn't gotten these people back their photos. I had been communicating with them, and I finally finished their shoot, and they're like, hey, no, I'm totally cool with it. You kept me up to date on everything that's going on. And, I was stepping outside of my comfort zone and doing a little bit extra for them. And, when a cosplayer, recognizes that and appreciates it, oh my gosh, I can't wait to shoot with them again. So, I mean, that puts a gold star right on your list.
Nice.
Yeah.
Amanda and Sudi, did you guys want to add anything?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to add, because I didn't address the second part of that question, which was how long to wait before contacting. And I agree with Anoli. If you, after 3 months, haven't heard anything, say, hi, how are things going? Have you had time to edit pictures or cull through them or whatever it may be? Having that constant communication is a lot better than just nothing. And usually, even if you can request, be like, just say, I was wondering, could I get 1 or 2 images for, just to keep up with my media sharing or something like that. It's a lot easier for me to take a little extra 15-20 minutes of editing one set and then work on just one image, real quick and get that to you to kind of keep you fed.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah, keep you fed while I'm still trying to catch up on that backlog.
Yeah. Okay. Amanda, did you want to add anything?
No, I think the other two covered it pretty well.
Sorry, Anoli, what were you saying?
Oh, no, you're fine. I was about to say, Sudi, this is why I give spoilers at the end of a shoot, just so that way the cosplayers have something to be like, oh my gosh!
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, so they have something to anticipate.
Right. So I actually like that you guys talked about culling and, cutting down, how many images were in a shoot and, the ones you definitely won't use and things like that. Because one of the things I don't think people realize goes into a shoot is that, process of elimination sort of a thing. And I know some photographers will offer like RAWs from their shoot, and some people will offer like a limited selection and say, okay, you can see the smaller thumbnails, pick from these and I'll do a full size with the full edits. Where do you guys stand on that? And is there anything that the cosplayer needs to communicate with you going into a shoot? Let's start with Inoli.
Well, I think this goes back to the very beginning of the shoot, having that dialogue. What are you going to use my photos for? If you ask me for the RAWs, it is 99% chance I'm going to say no. And, it's nothing against anybody else. The reason why I say no is because I think everybody has said it here in this chat, is that this is our art. My post-process, my, everything that I've put into it is in that photo. So I don't want you necessarily having the RAWs, because you can edit and alter RAWs in amazing ways.
Right.
But I don't necessarily want you saying
Sorry to cut you off.
Okay.
Sorry to cut you off. Just so people listening know, when I'm saying the RAWs, those are like the photos exactly as they come off the photographer's camera without any edits or anything like that. So, sorry, go ahead, Anoli.
No, you're fine. I'm not going to lie, because like I do boast about the whole, Junkin photographer trick where I can get within, a close exposure. My last shoot, actually, that I just did, I was shooting really quickly because it's 19 degrees and it's 25 miles per hour wind. And holy cow, I did not hit the exposure at all. But I was able to pull it out in the RAWs, but that's because it's my RAWs, not yours.
Right.
Now, if you do want to do your own editing and you want to do that, you need to have that conversation with the photographer and ask if it's okay to have the RAWs.
Right. Okay.
Don't be insulted if someone says no, because that's my dirty little secret back there. You don't want to see what I've actually done to this photo.
Fair. Sudi, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so I'm going to touch a little bit on what you were trying to say with the RAWs versus unedited JPEG. A lot of people who aren't into photography think that a RAW is like as in like a raw piece of meat, raw image, not a RAW as in the file type image. Okay, because there's a huge difference in me going, oh, yeah, you can have all of your unedited JPEGs from the shoot, and me going, you can have all the RAWs.
Right.
Because the RAWs that's essentially the raw data that comes out of your equipment and onto the computer. It has everything. It has all the dirty secrets, like Anoli was saying. So, like, if, the, lighting wasn't quite right in this image, I shot it anyways, but you can bring it out in post. I really don't want you to see what it looked like beforehand, but, but anyways, I've tried doing several different styles of doing my shoots for photographers, and honestly, I just went with what works best for me, and as far as like workflow. And that is, I do offer unedited JPEGs. What I'll do is that after the shoot, I will go through and cull them. So I will delete the ones that are like, nobody ever wants to see that. I will leave in goofy ones, goofy faces, because
Yeah. Sometimes that ends up being some people's favorites,
Right.
is to see some of these behind the scenes images, the dorky things we do during a shoot. And so they like to be able to share that with like just their friends and things like that, and just to have those memories. And so that's kind of my purpose behind offering those, that they can keep all of those unedited JPEGs.
Gotcha.
So that they have it for that purpose, but also from anyone that has worked with me has seen the difference between an unedited JPEG versus the finished product.
Can't
and
confirm.
I really
Yeah.
there's a huge difference between it. And so most of everyone I've ever worked with has always waited to share anything until I give them the final product, and then they're like, oh, yes.
Gotcha. Nice.
So
Okay.
that's just how I do it.
Nice. Okay. Amanda, did you want to add anything?
So I have a slightly different process than the Enoli and Sudi do. I actually will cull the images down to my favorite, about twice what I would will return in the end, and then I'll choose my top favorites. And if I do have a lot of images after that I think that the client would be interested in me editing, I'll then send them unedited JPEGs, because just from my point of view with that, I'm putting out a piece of art, I'm putting out it's my composition, my color work, etc. that's going into it, and I like to have as much control over that as possible. But I do know that not everybody does that, and I do think that's, if that is something you're interested in, it is definitely a good idea to ask in advance about how they do the post process. But yeah,
definitely ask.
Yeah, because it does go from difference to difference. It also means that I can put out edits a little bit faster because I'm not waiting to hear back from a client, which I really like.
Right.
But I think it's just a matter of how a person likes to work in their and their process, and how their brain thinks and whatnot. So
no, that totally makes sense.
hey.
Sudi and Noli, did you guys want to add anything before I move on?
I do want to say this though. There's nothing wrong between, for the audience, there's nothing wrong between a photographer who lets you choose, or a photographer who chooses their own work. Is just like their portfolio. What style do you like? Do you like to choose your own photos, or are you going to leave that in the hands of the photographer? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, of course, because one, the photographer does know their work, and they have the experience, or they have the schooling and the experience. So they're going to obviously choose the pictures that make you look the best. I just personally go with this is because it's very comfortable for me. It's very old school. Because you used to get proofs back in the days of film. Excuse me, whippersnappers. No, back in the 1900s. But for me, it actually spaces out my workflow. That's kind of why I do it. And also, as Facebook learns what you like to shop for, I actually learn as a photographer what you like when you choose photos. So I'm like, oh, okay, they like mostly above shots. They like that look. All right. Next time I shoot with them, I can incorporate that into my shooting style. But they're both very, very valid. There's nothing wrong with them. And they're...
Yeah, it comes down to preferred workflow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Very cool.
It's like potato.
Yeah. We're almost at the end here, so I just have a couple more questions. I'm going to start with Amanda on this one. But this question is on tipping etiquette. How do you feel do you think more people should take part in tipping since it is like an artistic form, or do you think it offends any photographers because they have their set rates, or how do you feel about that?
Personally,
I don't like advocate for tips or against tips because I try to include everything that upfronts in my pricing. But I will say that I get choked up, and it really makes me like just super happy when people tip me, because it means that they enjoyed working with me. And it's just a feeling of pride. Tips feel good. I'm never going to say no to more money because this is the kind of person I am, living paycheck to paycheck. And like you don't look a gift horse in the mouth. So, do I think that it should be necessary? I come from the tipping industry. Before I did photography, before my job right before photography, I was a hairdresser. So I worked in an industry where it was normal to tip, and I feel like it breeds a really having the expectation to tip and not already pricing stuff out to make a living wage with tips. I think it's BS, and I do feel like America as a whole needs to do away with the tipping industry, and they need to pay fair wages and whatnot. So I translate that into my own work. I don't ever expect anyone to tip me ever, but it feels good when they do.
Nice. Sudi, how do you feel?
Tipping, I never feel like it's a necessity. You know, it's supposed to be what it is, which is like the little extra of hey, we appreciated what you did, we appreciate your work. I know as a photographer, I have never forgotten a tip. Like, whenever a cosplayer has ever, been done shooting with me and they offer me a tip, I have never forgotten about them. And I want to shoot with them all the time because they just expressed that they like my work and that they appreciate it. And they are willing to not just simply just pay me for the work, but they're like, here, have some extra with it as well. I'm like, what? What is this? You mean I don't have to eat granola bars at con today? I can go to lunch. What is this? It's, and I know that I greatly appreciate it. I've never forgotten anyone that has ever done that for me. It makes me want to go out of my way whenever they want to do a shoot. I'm like, oh, you want to do something really crazy? Yeah, let's do this really crazy thing. I'm your person. I'm your girl, so it kind of exactly what Amanda went on about is spot on. It's just like, it's appreciated. Is it necessary? No. But definitely appreciated.
Cool. Inoli.
So I couldn't help it through my head this entire time. It's been Jim Carrey as the mask going, you love me. You really love me. That's how I feel when I get tipped. Now, I will have to say, someone like me, because I don't depend on it as a sole income, it supplements. But, if you give me a tip like, hey, you did awesome, here, have a monster, that's a tip. Or, hey, I got this little berserk item for you, awesome. Oh my God, that is great. I've been on a path of a journey of, deeds versus words. And so when someone does something to show they appreciate you, be it extra finances, as a money tip, or even saying, hey, can I buy you dinner? I love this. This was awesome. Like, that's fantastic. It proves that you did, you really do love their work. And I mean, we understand, especially at a con, you can't always afford like the best and the brightest, but even something small is amazing. And it speaks volume to how you feel about the photographer and their work. So, I mean, tip, finances. Oh, you want to give me an extra $5, $2, $20. Hey, I love you. I like you. You really love me. But I mean, just saying, hey, I love your work, it does make us so great. And when you express this on both, in verbal and on like social media, and especially when you refer us to your friends, that lets us know, hey, you really do like our work. I mean, tipping can come in a lot of different forms. Referrals are great. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Referrals are like, they make the world go round. It's so rewarding to hear that somebody referred me.
It always feels good.
Those things are also a great way to show your appreciation, because essentially that's what a tip is showing your appreciation for someone, and I know I personally have had a lot of people be like, well, you have this many years of experience, you should be charging more. I'm going to pay you more. I mean, that's great. And I love that you think I should be paid more. And I'm not going to argue against you. I got a fur baby of my own and he eats a lot. So awesome. Thank you for showing me your appreciation. So.
Right. Cool. So that's my last question for you guys, but I wanted to give you guys one last moment to add anything that maybe we didn't cover that you think is important, or just anything you want to throw in last minute. We'll go ahead and start with Sudi.
Okay. Let's see. I do want to cover possibly at con shoots versus on location shoots. And just that there can be a big difference between the result of the pictures that you get back. It might not be an epic castle, but I mean you're still getting that same artistic feel from the photographer. But there's also a little bit more that can go into with your on location shoots, and so that takes a little bit more planning, and it's almost a different animal than your convention shoots. I like to call my convention shoots the my con specials, just because it's you get a little taste of what it would have been like if we got to go on location somewhere, because that's an all-day thing for me. But it's doesn't take any less energy, well, unless you're hiking halfway up a mountain. I've seen your images lately, Holy. I've seen those.
What do you mean going up to Hanging Lake? I mean, it's just 3 miles straight up.
So, just something to take into consideration is that, with the on-location shoots, can take a great deal more planning. There's a lot more setup. Sometimes, even you have to take into consideration there's location fees. Some locations are going to want a fee done in order to shoot there. And so just keep some of those things in mind. So
nice. Okay. Inoli.
Well then. Sorry. I was distracted. I was thinking how con versus outside shoots is like comparing a domestic horse to a zebra. Just because you have to have a completely set of handlers to do a zebra. I think the number one thing that I know I would love for people to walk away from this podcast with is a better understanding that, photographers, a proper photographer is going to have the best interest for you in mind. And with that, respect them, but also respect yourself. So respect yourself when someone says, hey, we need to go to my hotel room. You can say no. You are entitled to say, no, I do not feel comfortable with that. But at the same time, as a photographer, I feel uncomfortable with certain types of shoots. I don't do boudoir. Sorry. Please respect that. You know, so if you have that professional respect from photographer to cosplayer and cosplayer to photographer, everyone's going to get along very well. The last thing I think I want to say is, remember who your photographer is. Are they a cosplayer as well? So if they are, you know, are they coming to a special event in cosplay? Maybe not take up all their time, and maybe offer to even do photos for them. Just because, you know, we love what we do, both photography and in cosplay. And when you respect us on both levels, oh my God, you're awesome. You know, we will bend over backwards for you. Always. Nice. I know I do. So, you know, there's a lot that goes into everything with photography. You know, it's just like the same planning and everything that you do with cosplay. We do it with photography. So, you know.
Okay. And Amanda, did you want to add anything?
No, I feel like everything was pretty covered. Just keep in mind, we photographers know that cosplayers are human, and we expect the same respect and
I like that
compassion and whatnot. That we expect that kind of words. Yeah, hard. We expect that kind of like reaction and experience back. So just remember, we're human, and we love you, and we want what's best for you, and I
like that.
You can't see my finger guns, but they're there.
we want reciprocity. We don't want reciprocity failure. I'm sorry, that's a photography joke.
So I don't know if you guys listen to our podcast regularly or not, but one of the things we like to do at the end is share some cosplay horror stories. Would any of you guys like to go first?
So I thought I had shared, you know, whatever cosplay horror stories I have had on your podcast already, and then you invited me to do this photography one, and I'm like, oh, I have a whole new set of horror stories to share. But one came into mind that I thought was great. So there is a convention that I like to shoot at that happens to have a very large like water fountain feature in the park that's kind of like right next to the convention center. And it's it has like these giant like platform steps, and there's no water on it during this time. Okay.
I know exactly what
and sorry, some people are like, I know this place.
It's a good place to shoot.
It is a great photo shoot place. Everyone's doing shoots there. It's wonderful, you know. It works for a lot of different characters. Well, these they're like big bricks of cement that are like 12 feet long and 8 feet deep, and at least, you know, the small ones are 8 feet tall, and so people will climb on them because they're just like these giant blocks that somebody played Legos with, and it just looks really awesome to do shoots on. Well, one shoot that I was doing, we are finishing up, you know, everyone is super careful while, you know, they're like, okay, do you feel comfortable climbing right here? Can you sit on the edge of this right here? You know, that sort of thing. Well, I was shooting, and it was towards the end of the shoot. I had already kind of wrapped up the shoot itself, and I was just getting some really fun shots because the cosplayers, the characters were all playing together, and it was awesome. Wanted to get those candid shots real quick. And then I'm like, oh, I like this. And I did a photographer classic. I stepped without looking.
Oh no!
And I fell off the big fountain thing.
Oh no!
So I fell off one platform. There was one 8-foot drop.
Oh no!
And apparently I hit the one that I fell onto just right. Then I fell down that one as well. So
oh no!
Oh, Sudis!
So I fell down 2 of those big blocks. So that's like, what, 2 8-foot drops.
Okay.
And and like the cosplayers were like, oh, because they knew me, and they're like, oh my gosh, and ran after me and found me curled up in a corner. And well, I saved the camera.
Oh my god.
Camera was good, right, Huzzah?
At least my flight was later that like afternoon, evening. And so when I got home, I went and saw the doctor after, and I had a bruised tailbone from it.
Oh my god.
Oh, yikes. That's
Yeah. So
Ow.
unfortunately there's that, but I now know you definitely look before you step.
Oh jeez.
Okay.
Oh jeez. All right.
I too
Amanda.
have done that at that same mountain. But I didn't fall
Oh,
that far.
Oh,
Um, Oh jeez, you guys are killing me. Amanda, did you have a story you wanted to share?
I have one from a cosplay point of view. I'm thankfully very blessed in the fact that I haven't had a whole lot of like scary moments as a photographer or anything like that. And I'm the photographer who will like climb in a tree, and my cosplayers will be like, "Wait, are you all right up there?" Like, and I'll be like, "No, it's fine. We do this every shoot."
cosplayer yoga.
Right? Or like I'll crawl into the fetal position on the floor and whatnot, and people will be like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just doing photos. It's okay. This is fine." But no, so as a cosplayer, and it's probably actually at the same convention that Sudis thing happened. I was cosplaying Elektra from the Marvel Universe, and I lost a leg strap at some point. I'm also, this story is so lame. I don't have any like really horrible cosplay stories either, but this one gave me a heart attack and it had a funny ending. So I like lost a bunch of my like leg straps at some point. Like they had just fallen off my legs while I was walking, and I was wearing nylon, so I didn't even notice. And like I was like full meltdown mode at the convention. I was supposed to do a shoot in it and everything, and I was just like, I can't do the shoot anymore. I don't have my dumb leg straps. Oh, this is so horrible. And then we were walking back to the hotel, and I used double stick tape to keep them on my nylons, and there they were, double stick taped on the way on a literal like on our crosswalk, and this is several hours later. They were just like taped to a crosswalk on the way back to my hotel, and I just like fucking died laughing. I was like, okay, yeah, that's about how that convention went all the way through.
That's fantastic. All right,
so good.
Anoli, do you have a horror story?
I'm trying to cut it down as briefly as I can and keep it PG. So I'm going to go from a cosplayer's perspective. Most of my photo shoots have been like really good. I mean, granted, shooting the cold sucks, but nothing horrible has happened. So I was wearing Shinsei from Bleach. And I just happened to do, I had to do a panel at this convention, and they required you to show up like 5 minutes before your panel time so you can check in with the room moderator, the whole 9 yards. I poked my head in because the room moderator is not outside. They are sitting inside. Well, unfortunately, the panel before me, mind you, this is the middle of the day. The panel before me is talking about how the size of the weapon is phallic, and I'm in Shinsei. He has 2 gigantic swords. So obviously they spot me, and they drag me and my fellow cosplayers, who are also in Bleach, in so they can pontificate about this subject. And I'm just shaking my head. Well, they happen to see a male cosplayer running through the hallway, and they start going off about how you shouldn't be crossplaying. It's very obvious. You're, the gender that you are, blah, 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 blah. I'm in Shinsei from Bleach. He has an open chest. He has hair like Robin Williams. He's hairy. So I go up to the girl and I whisper in her ear. I was like, hey, I'm a woman. Turns around to me. she grabs my shihakuso, which is ropes I'm wearing,
Oh no.
and tears them open.
Oh,
So
no.
I am now
Oh.
exposed to an entire room. And
Oh my
it,
gosh.
you can, luckily, my open chest binding covers everything, but it's very obvious
Yeah.
it's open chest binding. And
No.
Oh my gosh.
No
I'm
bueno.
sitting, I'm in front of the room and I'm like, well, I have a couple options. What can I do? I can either A, slap her, but that's horrible. Don't do that. 2, yell at her. I was like, no, that's not going to make the point. So I stood there and in character kind of smiled and said, you never know who you're going to meet. And they're like,
Oh.
it was like clapping, and I'm just like, actually, the room moderator came up to me and asked if I wanted to press charges. They were a younger
Oh,
teenage kid, so
Yeah.
it would just be kind of weird, but I just hope that they walked away from that with a better understanding that judging a book by its cover
Yeah.
is not cool. This is cosplay. It's for
Oh,
everybody.
wow.
It's for fun.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So-
Way
Yeah,
to play
totally.
It off, though.
Totally. Whew.
It's
It would be
myself.
hard to keep your cool with that. Dang.
Oh,
Dang. Well, thank you guys once again. This has been Sudi with Silverfire Studios, Miss Amanda Stars as Pretty Prism Photography, and Inoli Shiba with Inoli Images. Thank you guys all so much for being on our show.
Thank you.
Yay! Listeners, just remember you can send your emails with your horror stories or your good vibes, or just tell us what you want us to talk about next time. You can send those emails to us at cosplaystitchandseam@gmail.com, or on our website at cosplaystitchandseam.com, or on our Facebook group. Just search for Cosplay Stitch and Seam. And come hang out with us. We've got little memes and things to reply to every day, and tell us where you're at with your cosplays. And of course, feel free to post about your achievements, your fun things, your own horror stories. You can hit us up on our coffee at COFFEE coffee for Cosplay Seams. I'd like to thank Macy Roberts for the use of her theme song. It's always a lot of fun, and we enjoy using her music. And big thanks to David Jeffries, our audio editor, who has quite a daunting task this week. And make sure you check out his podcasts, Comic Trades Monthly, as well as Dungeons and Chill. What are you guys reading this month for Comic Trades Monthly?
So this month we are reading we're still working on Preacher, because we're doing a month-by-month thing, and then we're also going to be covering a what-if story of what if Batman got the Green Lantern ring. So that's gonna be coming up
I like
next
that.
month.
Very cool. I think this episode this week has been kind of meaty, so we might end up making it into a 2-parter. Yeah. So, and we also like to end our episodes on a terrible pun, so I'm sorry in advance, but here we go.
Oh, no.
Life is like a camera. Focus on what's important.
No!
Capture the good times. Develop from the negatives. And if things don't work out, take another shot.
oh.
We hope you guys all find someone who clicks with you.
Oh.
Bye, everybody.